everyone, and welcome to this very exciting session as a part of NBC Universal International Studio Speaker Series to celebrate the hit series Clickbait, which recently launched globally on Netflix. Today, we are joined by the fierce creative force behind the series, which is produced by NBC Universal International Studios production companies, Tony As Productions, Matchbox Pictures, and Heyday Television. This session is also brought to you in association with NBC Universal's early career employee resource group called the Young Professionals Network, which aims to celebrate diverse knowledge at all levels, making sure everyone at NBC Universal has the support and space to reach their true potential. Before we get started, let's take a quick look at the trailer of Clickbait.
This is a message for Nick's kidnapper. He is a husband,
a father, a brother.
He's kind, loving, and gentle.
I love you, son.
You made a terrible mistake. Let him come home.
It's a long way down to the bottom of the
Why is this happening?
Try to catch my breath.
What was his mental state when you last saw him?
What are you actually doing to find him?
Everything we possibly can.
I've been running for a long
Everyone is chasing a Nick Brewer story.
dark side.
So what's your angle?
If you don't find a missing person in the first 48 hours, the chances of finding them alive drops by 50%.
There's a new video. It's worse.
This is not a confession. It is a death threat.
Has Nick ever been violent?
It's a long way down.
As you can see, those messages are damning.
Where did you even get this?
How should we be interpreting the Nick Brewer video?
You shouldn't be going through this. None of us should.
He is the victim here.
There's something she's not saying.
Do you know where Nick is right now?
People seem determined to think the worst of my brother.
It's a long way down.
My name is Darren Adetossier, and I'll be the host of today's session. And I'm very excited to introduce the formidable Tony Ayres, who is the creator, showrunner, and executive producer from Tony Ayres Productions. Tom Winchester, the executive producer and president at Heyday Television, and Cherie Nolan, who is the director of episodes 7 and 8. So guys, before we kick off, I just have to say a huge thank you for joining us and taking the time out of your busy schedules to chat today. I think we can all agree that Clickbait has been such a success. I personally love watching it. The world has loved watching it. And it's going to be great to hear your insights about the show today. So I thought, let's start off with you, Tony, as the creator of the show, as I have to ask, where on earth did the idea of Clickbait come from? Was it like a shower thought moment? Was it something that's been in the works for It'd be great to hear how exactly this idea came about and what the process was of developing it.
So Clickbait had this really roundabout long gestation, which was that my co-creator, Christian White, wrote a script for a writing competition. And I read it and I loved it. And I suggested a way of turning it into a series, which he loved. And we decided to work together on that idea. And I had done a show called The Slap, which was from 8 different points of view. And we loved the idea that we could make a show that had a much more propulsive, bigger crime at the center and then still pivot around all these different points of view. So we kind of started like that. And then we took the show out in England, and Simon Maxwell at Channel 4 was really interested in it, except he said, why don't you just make it more contemporary? Why don't you make it about, really modern internet crimes? And so we kind of took that challenge, and Christian did this incredible research document. And it was when I was reading the research document and looking at all those kind of bizarre stories about catfishing and identity theft, and somehow, because my brain is quite mathematical, the entire plot just clicked into place, and all 8 episodes just clicked into place, and it's been like that ever since, really. And then we showed it to Heyday, and I think at that point, Heyday were really interested in looking for something that talked about technology and its impact on our contemporary life, and it went from there.
Amazing. And now, Tom, I have to ask then, from that Heyday point of view, in addition to that, what was it that attracted you to clickbait?
I think Tony sums it up so well. And actually, I didn't know about Simon Maxwell's involvement in that idea. So I feel now, next time I see him, I'm going to have to say thank you to Simon. But, you sum up so well, Tony, which was the show had so much to say about the world in which we are now living and our relationship to the internet. And David Heyman, who runs the company, has had a sort of long-standing interest in that kind of world, the one step into the future, tech as it will be. And I'm sure some of you know, we have a show called The Capture, which is set in a kind of deep fake world, and is a sort of great partner series in some ways to clickbait. So we were really sort of hungry for more stories in that space. And in fact, all of this was before I started, and Rosie Allison and Tony and David, I believe, met and absolutely loved it. And we just felt it really spoke to an audience who were still wrestling with their relationships, with social media and how they portrayed themselves online. And to me, that's a universal theme that just was fascinating, and we just were really hungry to get involved.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And what about you, Cherie? From a director's point of view, what was it that stood out about clickbait that made you want to work on it?
Well, Tony shared with me a lot of this background research, and it was terrifying. And I guess when I sort of applied that sort of grounded reality to the genre, it really made for a very high stakes story, basically, where you're invested in it emotionally because it's terrifyingly real. So that's really what sucked me in. I was scared, and I thought also because we sort of are able to identify with these characters and the search for love and how vulnerable we are on the internet. I think it just adds a lot of suspense. So from a storytelling perspective, it was a fantastic jumping off point. And obviously I had the benefit of seeing the first 6 episodes as well. So I was able to see the world that Tony and Tom and everyone had created, and then, ride that wave, and then make sure that, particularly in the final episode, that the real killer, who to some extent comes out of left field, the sort of challenge for that was to make sure that that was satisfying and gripping and real. It was important to me that it feel very real. Yeah.
No,
and a noirish melodrama, which is what Tony and I talked about many times. So hopefully we succeeded in delivering that.
Absolutely. And for the sake of anyone who hasn't gotten to the end yet, I'm not going to reveal what it is, but let's just say it is it's unexpected. But yeah, going back to what you were saying about storytelling, something which I really loved about clickbait is how each episode is told from a different character's point of view. Now, Tony, I know that this is something you've done in other work. What is it that draws you to this medium of anthology storytelling?
I think for this particular subject matter, it was really great because it gave you an opportunity to do a 360 around an event. So that, here is this big, inexplicable crime that happens, and what does it mean for all these different people, and for me, it's also at a meta level, it talked a little bit about our fascination with crime as entertainment, because, you get stories from the reporter, you get and also crime as career, you get a story from the detective, and so you get different meanings of it as a society, and you keep coming across the impact that crime has upon the survivors, the family, that so who become the real victims of the crime. So you get this kind of big global perspective on it, which I really loved.
Yeah, no, and I loved it too. And so when you have an idea like this, did you have like a creative team in mind when creating the show, and how is that assembled?
it sort of started with Christian and me, and then we brought a couple of American writers into the team, and we also had a very dear friend of mine, Pete McTighe, who was an English writer who was writing on the original version, but he kind of got super busy and had to go off and do his own shows, which he's been doing very successfully. And so we brought a couple of American writers in, Melissa Scrivener-Love and Bradford Winters, and they were both super experienced, and that became our writers' room, and we did a lot of research into each of these characters. Like we brought, we had various journalists come in and talk to us in the writers' room when we were trying to understand the reporter character. We had police come in. We had a woman who had been catfished come in, and she'd just written a book about it. And she was fantastic. So she really helped us understand that, the episode 4, the Emma character. So we had a friend of mine who was from an Iranian background, and he helped us kind of with the cultural specificity of that episode. So it was a very deeply researched show.
Yeah, it's amazing to see how much goes on behind the scenes. I think sometimes as a viewer, you're just watching the show and you're like, okay, how does this all happen? And I think one area which links in with that, Tom, is how do you get a show to Netflix? Like, I think to all of our audience who are watching, they're aspiring to be in this field. What was that process like? And can you give advice on how you did that, please?
I think the sort of honest answer is it was a sort of quite circular process, Tony, don't you think? I mean, it was not straight line from A to B and getting that show greenlit. It took a lot of people, it took a lot of time, and it took a lot of energy. We actually had the show in development with some UK broadcasters, and it was actually set in the UK originally. And then in the end, that didn't quite work out for a couple of reasons. And our colleagues at NBC, I believe, came up with the idea of sort of setting it actually in America. And Tony, please do jump in if any of this is wrong. But basically, it was something about taking the show and putting it in a different city in the US that in my opinion, made it feel much bigger. And I think part of the appeal to Netflix was the scale of the story and the crime. And actually, I think, Tony, you were having a general meeting, weren't you, with Netflix?
It was purely by accident.
Yeah.
I can brag because we actually had 2 other offers on the show, including one in the room, which has never happened to me before. And then I was doing a general meeting at Netflix, and the people I was meeting with, I was just kind of describing the show to them, and they were so taken by it that Netflix ended up making a straight to series offer, which was phenomenal.
Yeah. And what I would say about it is that it was the strength of the idea, wasn't it? I mean, I think it's so undeniable. And as Tony says, what's so extraordinary about this project is Tony really did have like the 8-episode story in his head. So anyone who sort of goes, there wasn't time to work out, the ending's such a shock, it feels like that was carefully planned from day one. Like every single twist and turn was sort of thought out, and surprisingly early in the process. So I just think it was a really undeniable pitch, and I'm not surprised that Netflix bought it in the room, to be honest.
Brilliant. And Cherie, as a director, could you talk us through the process of preparing for a project like this, especially when working with multiple directors to create a cohesive story?
Well, I wasn't working with the other directors, but I got to see the work, so I was very fortunate. For me, the fact that every episode was told from the point of view of a different character, it meant that I didn't have to really be slavish to what anyone else did. What Brad Anderson did in episode 1 was very different to what Emma Freeman did, and so we were all able to look at each character and really start telling the story, I guess, from a fresh point of view, a fresh start. So with 107, for example, with Ethan, I guess, I was thinking about Gus Van Sant's films a lot, and I loved I loved the HBO series. Oh gosh, it's just escaped my
Euphoria.
Euphoria, I loved. So there's sort of little sort of influences of that. And then 8, I was much more in my brain I just kept thinking noir melodrama. So I really was just about concentrating on that, concentrating on the actors and the characters, and really just trying to be granular. The challenges for my block were really a little bit informed by the fact that we shot it just coming out of a big lockdown in Melbourne. And so we had a lot of restrictions, which were sort of interesting. So we lost a lot of our locations, our interior locations became set builds. And so we sort of had to re-prep the block because of that. So there was Lauren Crasco did a lot of set design from Hotel Quarantine in Sydney. And then the other interesting challenge we had, and we had issues with nights and hours and so on. So and this was all new to us. So our cast had to come back into Melbourne from a 5-month break. So it was logistically a very interesting challenge. And I'm a very pragmatic person, so I sort of have to get all of those things sorted before I can really start cracking open the nut, as it were. So, and the other interesting challenge that we had was that Jalen Fletcher, who plays Kai, grew about a foot in the break. And not only did he grow enormously, his voice dropped about an octave. And so that had some, Tony and I had many interesting conversations about that and how to, I mean, he couldn't fit in the truck, for example, in the back of the truck. He goes to Ed and Dawn's trailer as a very small child and emerges a man, as it were. So that was interesting.
Amazing. It just goes to show the importance of collaboration, doesn't it? And speaking of collaboration, Tom, I'd like to ask, what was the collaborative process like working with Tony and Matchbox?
It was great, actually. You know, I think international production is undoubtedly the hardest type, because it doesn't matter whether you speak the same language or not. The industry grows up in a different way. And I think coming to understand how you will view every single person's role on a crew in a team is sort of step one, you know. And I think once you develop that understanding of what everyone's going to do, then it is wonderfully smooth. And I think Matchbox are, you know, I think probably one of the biggest producers of Australian television, and they have such a deep well of relationships in Australia, and we were able to sort of utilize all of that, and that was just a gift. And I have to sort of give a big shout out to Helen Pankhurst, who was Matchbox's head of production. We could not have made the show without her. And Tony, as I said at the beginning, was just a dream to work with from the beginning. You know, he really opened his arms to us, and he really sort of brought us into the process. And I hope that sort of made the show richer. So we really enjoyed it. And I know David agrees. We'd love to work with Matchbox again. We hope, fingers crossed, we might get a second season of Clickbait. Who knows? You know, they've been very clear it's a limited series, but things change. We'll see. So yeah, it was a really smooth process. And I think, you know, time zones aside, because we can't lie, it's hard making a show when some of you are in LA, some of you are in Australia, and some of you it's not an it's not an ideal sort of trilogy of time zones, but I think we worked it really well. Yeah. And the one thing that
was interesting,
I just wanted to say that the one thing that, talking about collaboration, was, you know, Cherie actually came on at quite a late stage in the process, and it was amazing, really, because we did close down for 5 months, and I think Tony will agree, there were times when we wondered whether we would get up again at all. You know, we flew all of our cast and American crew home, and very sadly, we did lose the original final block director because, you know, of COVID complications. I don't mean health-wise, it was just getting her back was too complicated. And Cherie obviously has a huge amount of experience in American television, and I know that Tony and her had this sort of understanding and had known each other for many years, and she came on, and I think in some ways landed the show for us in the most outstanding way and sort of saved the day. So it's a huge thanks to her. No, really, I do. I think it was
thank you, Tom.
When you joined the team.
Cherie's spectacular. Cannot praise her enough, because not only did she have to, do episode 7 and 8, she had to shoot scenes across the entire series, because there were missing scenes because of the nature of production, we were shooting around certain locations and we were going to pick up scenes from certain locations. So Cherie had to basically fill in for every other director at some point. And she did it so magnificently and with so much empathy to the actual show, but and with so much style and flair. It was a really joyful collaboration. I cannot thank her enough, and can't wait to work with her again. It just feels like we were really lucky. We were really lucky to have her, and we all said that to each other.
Wow. That's overly kind, but thanks, Tony. Thank you, Tom. I mean, filling in those gaps and those scenes is something that I am very used to, and so in a sense that wasn't a challenge. Probably some of the challenges were trying to direct Jessica Collins on FaceTime in Oakland, so that probably was a bit tricky. But to speak to she's such a good actress, Jessica. That was really tricky. There was time, the thing kept falling out, and it was. So we had some funny moments like that. But what we do, Darren, and it's a team sport, right? I'm only going to be as good as every single person in the crew. I'm only going to be as good as the showrunner and the creator and the writers. So yes, I'm there, sort of riding the chariot, but it is a team sport. My job is to bring out the best that everyone brings every single day. And if I'm not doing that, then I'm not doing my job. So it's my privilege to work with the incredibly talented crew and those incredibly talented actors and everyone behind the scenes, Tony, Tom, and particularly Rod Ballard, who was there shaping the material. So, it's an honor to do my job, I must say, and to be back in Australia, having fled the US and then be able to come back and work through that process and have it end with the audience loving it. I just cannot begin to tell you. It's such so rewarding.
Oh, that was such a nice, wholesome moment. And yeah, I've got a wooden table in front of me, which I've just been touching from the moment you said season 2 could potentially happen. So fingers crossed.
Who knows? Yes. I think the phrase is manifesting, isn't it? Let's manifest it into existence.
Yes.
You bet.
Everyone. But kind of drawing onto, the actresses, the casting, the actors. Tony, diversity and inclusion is something which I know is really important to you. How did you approach this casting for the show?
I think when we were putting the show together, it was always really important to me to reflect the world that I live in and that I see, and so the gay Asian character was one that was felt like, oh, that's a natural for this show, and I kind of we were so lucky to have Betty Gabriel in our cast as well. Like she's wonderful, and I love the idea of an Iranian detective. It just felt like it was a spin on the normal cop. So all of those things just built themselves in. And once we had Betty and Adrian Grenier, then you had 2 mixed race children. So so the show just naturally filled itself in exactly the right way, and it was always important that we just make human beings, real human beings who are dealing with real issues, and that they just happen to be from a diverse range of backgrounds. Because I think that that's where diverse drama works at its best. Because you're writing characters, you're not writing identities. So we just really try to make these people. Foreground people from different backgrounds, but make them as flesh and blood and complicated and contradictory. Because the reality is that everyone in the show is pretty flawed. Like everyone has bad, no one behaves all that well, really. And, they're all difficult, complex, tricky characters. And I guess that's, what I like about drama, the potential for drama is it's all about dealing with the complicated things in life.
Particularly within families, right? Which seems to bring out the best and the very worst in all of us.
I really hope that as time goes on, the show does get the acknowledgement it deserves for the representation on screen. Betty and I were both saying how wonderful it is that there is such a wonderful cross-section in the characters, and Abraham is wonderful. I mean, we're so lucky to have brought him onto the show as the world's most controversial journalist at the moment, I think, perhaps. And it was all Tony's sort of ambition from the outset. It really was. These were the characters he had in mind, and these were the stories he wanted to tell. And I think that comes from Tony being a great advocate for diversity. And you always have been, haven't you, Tony? I think that's something that was incredibly important to you from day one on this show. So I'm really proud of the way it's turned out, and it's great that audiences have loved it in the way that we do, I think.
Yeah, it's incredible to see that representation. And I mean, I've already been singing the praises, so I'm going to do it again. You guys did such a brilliant job. So let's fast forward to actually being on set. Cherie, you've already shared some moments, but could you talk us through what a typical day in the life was like on set?
Well, it always starts for me getting in before everyone, me, the DP, and the first, and we always walk the course. So we have a plan. I mean, it sounds like I'm a bit boring, frankly, but I mean, it's very important, particularly when you're dealing with kids and with limited hours and stuff and 10-minute breaks and all sorts of things. So it's really important that, we had a plan every day. As I said, for me, once I've planned, that means I'm available to work with the actors and to be able to swing with whatever happens after we block the scene, and then we rehearse it a little bit. You don't want to be standing in a room and sort of tell actors like Betty Gabriel and Zoe Kazan, stand here, move here, then do this gesture. So this is a human drama. This is a family drama. So there had to be some time and some space to work through the scene. And Zoe in particular is very granular about a scene. She'll sort of, if there's logic bumps, and she'll pick me up on it. If there's this blocking that doesn't make sense to her, or, she's always thinking and contributing. So, I look at the day right at the beginning. I know how it's going to pan out, and then we just played, and we just try and we start to do the work, and we make sure that I've got I have clear notes from Tony about, we do a tone meeting about both episodes where we discuss all the things that need to be hit, story points, emotional moments. And and Tony also doesn't hover around a set, which is a good and a bad thing, because sometimes I wanted him to hover and wanted him to be there. But because Tony's a director as well, he's sort of very trusting. He's like John Wells, actually, who I've done a lot of work with. He's very similar to him. So that's also liberating, and he has tremendous faith in me, which meant that we were able to just hopefully deliver every scene and what was important to him. And so that we did for whatever it was, 25 days, I think we had to shoot, wasn't it, Tony? So, and then as he said, sometimes I was picking up other people's scenes. And so it was a process of making sure I viewed every episode, that Mark and I had discussed. We always had a visual plan, and basically we just executed it. That was what we did, day in, day out, which was a lot of fun. We were blessed with weather, I will have to say. Sometimes you're not. We had fantastic weather. So, I was grateful for all of that. And also the lockdown meant that we had tremendous access to locations that we probably wouldn't have. I mean, it was terrible in so many ways, but, there were a couple of silver linings. And it meant that we really didn't ever do any sort of overtime. So it was planned incredibly well, I must say. That's everyone else's work. That was everyone else's work. That wasn't just me. Yeah. Sorry, Tony.
We were the first Australian show to shut down because of COVID, and I think we were the first or the second Australian show to go back. Yeah. So we were kind of, the guinea pigs.
Yeah. Well,
we were, yeah.
Like, how on earth did you go about making it look like Oakland, California? I need to know the tricks of the trade here, please.
We had a wonderful production designer, Lauren Krasko, who is from the Bay Area herself. So she came out and she's just so detailed. Like, she has such an eye for the height of the door handles. Like, we had to change all the doors so that the door handles were the right height. We had to visually change all the rooftops because, so there were things that she completely kept us honest about. And also we shot, it wasn't very much in the end. It was like 4 days in Oakland itself, but they were key scenes. And early on, Tom had the very brilliant observation that if you sell a location in the first couple of episodes, people are going to stop asking questions. And so we designed a few scenes in Oakland, and I think it really helps nail it. And so it was that combination, but it's great because we proved that we could do it. Friends of mine in Melbourne thought it was shot in America.
Yeah. And the other thing, Tony, I think, is how much time we spent going around US cities finding one that would match with Melbourne as well, wasn't that? Was
right. It's a very good match. Yes.
Yeah.
It was a reverse engineering job. Yeah. Remember because we went to Tom and I went to Portland and we went to San Diego, and we were just kind of driving around America.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's an incredibly good match to those two cities.
Well, you smashed it. I had no idea until recently. I'm like, how does this work? But it's always great to hear all of these behind the scenes. So I guess reflecting on all of your involvement in Clickbait, do you have any favourite moments or anecdotes from your involvement from filming or being on set that you'd like to share? Tony, let's start off with you.
Well, I think Cherie also located the funniest thing, which was actually we shot out the top half of the brewer's house before we were locked down and shut down for 5 months, and then we shot the bottom half of the house. So, and of course Jalen had grown up, like he had actually grown up 6 inches. So there's a scene where he's upstairs. He goes upstairs, and so he's 6 inches shorter upstairs, and then he comes downstairs to talk to his mother, and he's 6 inches taller, and then he goes upstairs again. So it's not even like they're in different episodes; it's basically in the same sequence of scenes. And somehow, the magic of cinema, magic of screen, you don't notice it, or no one has picked it up that I've known. Maybe someone on Twitter has, but
nobody's mentioned it to me. It's amazing.
No one. Yeah, and and if you kept a careful eye, the other favorite thing that I noticed was actually a social media response. Like, some of the memes that have come from people's responses to the show are hilarious, but there was one guy who spotted a clue which we carefully laid in episode 4. And no one else in the entire world had spotted it. And then one guy on Twitter spotted it. Yes.
Wow.
It's just I'll just say this. When Emma, at the very beginning of episode 4, when Emma gets given a coffee from Nick or Danny, there's one person who's noticed that the other side of the bed hasn't been slept on.
Right.
Okay, we'll leave.
And we thought it was such a cool clue. We thought it was such a cool clue, and no one picked up on it.
That's amazing. Also, I'm now going to have to go back to the episode and see if I can spot the height difference. About you, Sheree, have you got any favourite moments or anecdotes from filming?
I must say that my favourite moments were around J-Lo and all the many conversations we had about that, probably because it was just such a, I mean, I'm amazed that no one's picked it, to be honest, and I'm amazed at how it works. But I'm very gratified because, as I said, if you're in the story and you've done the job, then hopefully no one's noticing that. I mean, I had fun every day on Clickbait. I have to say, it's very difficult. I loved meeting and working with Betty, and I love working with actors. I love them, even when sometimes they're difficult. I still love it. I'm always learning from them. So it's really hard for me to pick out any one day. If I'm learning something from somebody, then I'm very happy and I'm excited, and it's why I do what I do. So I love Zoe, I love Betty, I love the boys, I love Phoenix, and I got to work with Ian Meadows as an old friend, and who plays Matt. For me, that's why I direct, is to work with actors. So yeah,
awesome.
They're all my favorite bits, working with them. Yeah.
And what about you, Tom? What's been your favorite moments being involved with everything?
I have so many, but I think the one that felt quite special was, this has been a really hard couple of years for not just us, but the whole world, right? And closing down in March 2020 was heartbreaking. And I think we all had a lot of sleepless nights about not just our show, what would happen to society, to the world. So I think a special moment for me was when we finally got all of the cast and crew back from the US to Melbourne, and everyone had said, of course we're coming back. There hadn't been anyone really on the cast who had sort of questioned the possibility of finishing the show. And once everyone had sort of had feet on the ground again, it was just a really wonderful moment, because it was a testament to how much everyone wanted to complete the series and how much everyone loved what we were doing. And it was a really sort of wonderful team moment, I would say. So that will always go down for me as a special point in the production.
I think the final block of shooting with Sheree there, it was just like the happiest time. For like, one, it was the miracle that we could even do a show in a pandemic, and two, the fact that everything just kind of, the rushes were great, it looked so great. That sort of, I think the last two episodes really nailed that feeling of suburban noir, which was what we were trying to do with the show. And yeah, it was a very I think we had to sort of slap ourselves to sort of to believe that it was all happening.
The relief, I can't imagine the relief you guys had. I mean, it was, I didn't have that 5 months of stress. I just came in and did my job. So, but as Tom said, that table read when we did that was a fantastic moment. So, yeah.
That, and I mean, not only the relief of finishing the show, but also the relief of seeing, oh my gosh, we smashed it, #1 global. That can speak for itself, but individually, how do you guys feel about the global response to Clickbait? Tom, should we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, I just felt huge relief, if I'm being completely honest. It was a hard show. There's no denying the pandemic was a massive obstacle and continues to be. And I think just sort of, I'm not a big Twitter person, but watching the fans just fall in love with the show and go completely crazy, and seeing, what I loved so much was seeing people watching all of the episodes and how many people kind of go, oh, I've solved it, like I've got this, and then like 15 minutes later there's a second tweet that's just like boom. It's just great fun. Like I can't deny that I have become slightly obsessed with watching fan reactions, and that is always wonderful. We're in the business to make series that people love, and I think it's undeniable to say that the fans, the audiences love Clickbait. So it's been a real joy to watch.
Yes. Absolutely. And what about you, Tony? Obviously, as the creator of this series, what was it all like for you?
The other shout out I have to make is not call out, shout out. Got to get it right. Is to Tom Winchester, who has been my great ally, and I would not have been able to get through this show. It was a really tough show to make, and Tom has been amazing, and he's just such a great person to work with. Like he's just, like he's so smart and he's so creative, but he's also respectful and pragmatic, and like all the things that you actually want with, so it has been aspects of the show have been phenomenal, and somehow the success of the show feels like it's a reward for all of the great relationships that were formed around the making of the show, and the good karma that we generated through trying to basically make the best thing that we could under the most difficult circumstances you can imagine. And I think that feels like, well, so we did a good job. We did the best job we could. I'm not a Twitter person anymore. I was obsessed with it for a minute, and then I realized that I kind of went right off it, and then I went back on it, and it's just hilarious seeing some of the responses, and it's it makes me smile. Even some of the haters make me smile, and so like I'm very grateful. And this was the first time I've ever done a whodunit, so I kind of felt like I learned so much from doing it, and hopefully, we'll get to do it again. Either a second series or series 1 was a great proof of concept.
Guarantee we would all love that. And finally, Cherie, what about yourself?
I'm just so incredibly grateful and happy for Tom and Tony, to be honest, because having known how difficult it was to come in. I mean, I'm just so happy for them and for all the team who worked so hard on it. I have to say, I love whodunits. I watch them compulsively myself. So, but I never know if what I'm doing is necessarily going to strike a chord with an audience, and especially one on this side. I've got my own little sort of family group, and I'm amazed at how many of my family and friends have watched it and reached out to me. So yes, there's the Twitterverse and all those hilarious memes about Zoe's hair and stuff, but that's all fun. But for me, I guess, so many of my sisters, one of them hates suspense, and she watched it, but only after she Googled the ending, and she said, I couldn't stand it. Had to know. So and they're very critical, so I've got sort of my own group, and they all watched it and reached out. So I'm just I'm blown away by it. Very happy for NBC, Matchbox, Heyday, and everyone involved. Thrilled, and please let there be more.
Yeah. Very well deserved. It's been an amazing series. And unfortunately, we are actually coming to the end of this panel. So my final question to you all is, for our emerging talent tuning in, could you share a few words of wisdom, like things that you wish you knew at the start of your career? What would you have liked to know, and what can you share with everyone watching? Just because we are short for time, though, if we could keep it to like one thing, that would be really great. So Tony, let's start off with you.
Don't work with people that you wouldn't share a meal with.
That's a good one.
That is a good one.
Cherie?
Nobody can stop you from doing anything. They may not help you, but they cannot stop you.
Love that. And no pressure now.
I think passion and perseverance. It's a competitive industry. Don't be afraid of a no. Keep pushing, and if you're passionate and you persevere, you will get there.
I love that.
100%.
What a wholesome note to end on. It has been such a pleasure speaking with all of you today. Thank you so much for coming and doing this, but also for creating, as I said, my favourite series this year. And for all of the viewers, I hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't watched Clickbait already, which I highly doubt, make sure to go and do that now. But for now, I've been Darren Adetossier, and thank you so much for watching.
Thank you so much, Darren.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.